If you have cloth that is well glued in, and old-fashioned shanks did have cloth that was well glued in, the modern ones, the process that they use, the kind of glue that they use, there's instability to it. And maybe it's not glued all the way around. I'm not sure the details of that, but this technique doesn't work well if the glue joint isn't solid. To loosen, to tighten up a shank that's a little bit on the loose side, say these swung 10 times instead of 9. Okay, I would use a Menino brooch, but not the rough part of it. I'm just using the tip of it because it's a fortuitous shape. And I place it in the cloth between the wood. See, can you see that? Between the wood and the center pin. And I do it down toward the hammer first, and I press quite hard into the cloth and work it around. And being felted cloth, being wool, that wool grips on itself, and that compression holds remarkably well. And then I will work it really hard and to a very stable result. And I can generally, with cloth that is well glued in, I can reduce the swings by half, more or less. In the case of these shanks, I have found that they're not glued in well enough. And so I have this kind of press fit of the center pin that has come to work well. Another situation is where you get cloth that is just entirely too tight. And again, if it has a good glue joint, you can treat it with alcohol and water, 50-50, and using an oiler, and let it sit overnight, and it will shrink the cloth. Initially, everything will seize up even worse, but overnight it will shrink the cloth and things will be too loose. Then you go through choosing a pin size that, basically you just put the same size pin in all of them, which I'm doing here. I'm going from a 20 size pin to a 21 or 21 and a half, depending. You can't reduce the size of the pin because it won't be held snugly in the bird's eye. And that's true in either composite or wooden shanks. So anyway, I go through and I pin them all to my swings of choice, 9 half swings, and then I leave it overnight. A rush job is what it is if you have to do it, but changes of humidity, changes of, the thing sitting there, maybe slight denial on my part as to how hard I've worked each of them. If I put in a pin and it's the right swings, I'll set it down. Anyway, with this set, I came back and the ones in the high treble were spot on, and the ones in the middle, I had to go up a half a size pin. And then there was a smattering of difference in the base where a bit of... And so what I do is I put the pins in and I don't clip them. And I just tuck them under so they're all slightly leaning so that all the pins are in except the ones that swung properly. And then I test them again and clip them. You definitely have to do this if you shrink the cloth. And I would recommend shrinking the cloth, waiting till the next day until it's thoroughly dried out. And it might take more, if you've got a very humid environment, it might take more than a day. And that's a hazard that, how long does it take to entirely dry out? and entirely complete it. Shrinking is more the point. And that's hard to say. So I would definitely, leave a day for it to dry, do your pinning, and leave another day to find out what happened. And depending on how radical things changed, you might want to leave a couple of days before you come back for a final pass. Anyway, I mean, you can take samples. You don't have to go through the whole set each time. But what you want is consistent pinning of an appropriate friction throughout the set of hammers that improves your way off. It definitely improves control of bounce, repetition, and tone for your player. This is the biggest difference. Now, I will also repin as needed the wippen flanges. The biggest problem here is too much friction. About 2 to 2.5 grams, I think, is perfect for that. Perfect for this is 5 grams. But on Alan Edder's advice, he says he could never get them stabilized, and I've been pinning away and then putting them back on and forgetting about it. The last couple of, several sets ago, I decided to have the extras in the set just stay on my tray pinned to see what happened. And so I overpinned them. I pinned them to like 10 grams and left them for a couple of days, and they came down to 5. Well, eventually they came back down to sort of 2.5. And that is just, for whatever reasons, the construction of the wooden wippen with cloth bushings just does that under the pressure of the spring. Less material. So I accept them as they come now, and I prefer them to be 5 grams for reasons of the spring in particular, and the results in the way they work with the hammer. But they are what they are, and you've got to go with the nature of things. Now, the W&G parts, if you can get them to be pinned at a suitable pinning, which is negotiation between you and the manufacturer and them and the people that work for them, but if you can get them to come in at about the right amount, they are very stable, and they can stay at 5 grams, and you get what you want there. With the jack, ideally, with the spring out, you want it to fall, not like that, but gradually. That's about perfect in the compromise between the stability of enough friction and the freedom of enough lack of friction. These are generally very good. For some reason, there's a fad of impregnating the bushing cloth with graphite that, in combination with high humidity, seizes up some of them. Now, maybe it's those with a lot. I'm not sure exactly why, but it's not all of them that go bad, but some of them will seize up and can cause a callback later. But as these come, they're reliably where I want them. So it turns out to be this that I pin. Now, in terms of the wippens that are available, the high quality wippens that are available for a Steinway, it's a Wally Brooks design, I understand, and it's nicely done, except that some, in the case of the bees, they fit perfectly. In the case of the M's, I've found that the capstan, as set up, lands back here on the whipping heel. I use a jute string that I make a tip that is flat and solid with a little super glue, and I trim it so that it's its own needle, and then I thread it through to the end of the piece of string that I have and clip it. And I do it so that it's at the back of the heel, and it puts a new profile on the whipping heel that works well with the jack. So anyway, pinning makes a big difference in the consistency of the regulation, and therefore the control that the player has to produce musical results. Well worth the investment. If you have this, you can hang hammers and you can trim the nibs off in place and grind them and accept the pinning that's there and all of that and not take them off. But really, taking them off and putting them back on, particularly if you have a scale to put them on back to, which the regulation station provides, it's just a half hour to get them off and a half hour to get them on, and then you have a little bit of adjustment of the traveling that you did and the squaring of the hammers, perhaps, and you have these advantages of being able to adjust the pinning and fine-tune the tails and the weight and the whipping heels. And for that, I'm just putting another plug for my trays. These trays have 88 holes on either rail, and they're wide enough and deep enough to take the whole set of wippens and the set of hammers. Whether they're new or they're the hammers and the hammer shanks and wippens that you're just regulating. If it's to your advantage to take them off, this tray makes it just easy to keep everything in order and do the work and do it quickly and efficiently. Yeah, the beauty of this tray is it just makes it so easy to assemble and disassemble and to work on the parts. And because it's easy, it becomes viable and cost-effective to take the parts off, do the proper job, and put them back on. And please like, subscribe, or follow the link in the notes to my website.